Hello and welcome to Schmidy's guide on how to DPS in the secret world. In honor of the relaunch coming to this game later this month, I have decided to make a couple of guides targeted towards new players just beginning endgame content. We're going to run through the skills, the gear, and then about 45 seconds of the rotation just to show you how it works. So, if you are planning on running endgame content and you have not already, I highly recommend getting and playing through the issue content. It adds storyline and missions to the game, as well as giving us access to some of the beginning end game gear that we will want to keep and upgrade. It also provides some of the upgrades that we will be using in this build. So let us begin. The build is going to be pistol shotgun so that we can bring the most important buffs in the game for DPS, which is deadly aim and breaching shot. So we're going to be using pistol builder. We're going to be using hair trigger, mostly because it hits 4 times every second, and each one of those hits can either penetrate or critical, and anytime that you penetrate or critical, you will be doing a bunch of extra stuff on this build. So those are both very important. Next we're bringing lock, stock, and barrel, which is going to give us 5 more shotgun resources. Basically, it's going to give us a second consumer for free every 30 seconds. You do have to be wary, though, because even though you get a second shotgun consumer, you still have to wait for this 4-second cooldown on out for a kill, which means you're going to have to use out for a kill first and then use some filler in between to get it rolling. Then our consumers are going to be start and finish, another pistol attack that's going to hit twice, allowing us to proc more with penetrating and critical hits. Out for a kill, which is just the highest attack consumer that shotgun provides for us. And our elite is going to be shotgun wedding, again because it hits more than 1 time per second, and it lasts for 2.5 seconds, which makes it really good filler in between our out for a kills. Then we of course have deadly aim, which increases the critical chance of everyone in the party by 40% for 10 seconds, and breaching shot, which increases the penetration chance of everyone in the party by 45% for 8 seconds. You want to be using these buffs at the same time, and most of the time you're going to want to use about 3 or 4 builders first, and then pop these at the beginning of a fight, with a couple of exceptions. Finally, our auxiliary is going to be timber, just for the enormous damage. You can see that does even more than our consumers do. Our passives are going to be sudden return, a proc that makes an extra hit occur every time you penetrate. These extra hits can also critical and penetrate, though they cannot proc further sudden returns or further passive abilities. One in the chamber is the exact same thing except for critical hitting. Third degree is going to make it so that whenever we penetrate 3 times, we're going to add an afflict that does pretty substantial damage and can also crit and pen. Elemental force has changed drastically, but is still a really good skill since it came out. We are going to build up to 5 counters, and then every time we do that, we get an extra 20% chance to critical hit for 5 seconds. So this essentially increases our critical chance by 10% over the course of the fight, and we're going to be using that 10% or that 20% buff on the big stuff, making it so that our big stuff is more likely to critical hit. Iron Maiden is just a staple in pretty much any build that plans on doing damage. Whenever you penetrate an afflicted target, you gain the minor penetration chance, an extra 15% chance to penetrate for 8 seconds. Going to be running Fortunate Strike. Whenever you hit an afflicted target, there's a 10% chance you'll perform an additional hit. We can activate this and Iron Maiden with 3rd degree, but 3rd degree does not have great uptime, so we will be missing chances to use this outside of a dungeon where our tank is giving us a real afflict. And finally, we have Livewire, the elite version of One in the Chamber, essentially. The one big difference is that it will hit on the next hit, which means that Livewire never procs on the hit that originally criticals. Generally this isn't a big deal, but it makes a difference in 1 or 2 builds. Finally, Revved Up increases the damage of Rotting Teeth, which is an afflict caused by all chainsaw skills. Not a big deal here, but it's the only thing we can slot that does a little tiny bit more damage. Now let's run through the gear. You're going to notice a lot of this gear is blue in comparison to some of the other guides that I've run if you've seen them, and that is because you just don't need as much. Like, tanking and soloing gear needs to be a little bit better than DPS gear, just naturally. So, if you have the ability to, you can get a shotgun, is what I would suggest, from finishing the Transylvania missions. If you're going to get a custom shotgun from finishing those, I would put crit rating on it, and I would slot abuse into the shotgun. Then I just picked this one up from an elite dungeon I was running through. I would prefer it to have completely critical rating, but this is a pretty solid second, especially for something that I didn't have to pay any packs to get glyph toolkits for or use materials on. Again, I would slot aggression in the pistols if you get them, and you want to actually slot something good in them because they're purple. Then we are going to be using the Forgotten Ashes, which is the damage headpiece you get from running issue 6. And we're going to put pen on it, and we're going to get a signet of laceration. I happened to get one while running through the issue missions the first time I ran through them. This signet is incredibly expensive. So if you can't afford it, then put it at the top of your DPS wish list, but don't worry about it for now. Next, we would be going through issue 7 and getting our neck piece. I'm actually running the exact same neck piece for our tank set that we were running here, attack with hit rating, and the attack rating issue specific signet that you get at the Envoy of Kata Oro in Transylvania next to the Draculeshti camp. Next we would be going to issue 8, getting the attack rating piece, putting crit on it, and getting the 1.5% damage increase. I don't have that, so we're going to just create a glyph here. A talisman. I just made this talisman and this glyph and put them on with toolkits. If you don't know how to do that, the Secret World database has a great guide on how to craft in this game, and the crafting in this game is very simple. Then we will be running to the to Kaidan in issue 9. Again, this signet is coming straight off our tanking gear, so attack rating, hit rating, and the damage, or the attack piece that you get from the Envoy in Genpachi Park. Then we go to the scissors, which you get from issue 10. Once again, straight from our tank set. So if you are tanking, then it's easy to switch to DPS, and if you're DPSing, you only need to switch 3 pieces. It's pretty simple. So we have our attack rating pen and the damage increase signet. Then we're going to be getting our wrist piece from issue 11 if you're running it. This is a tank piece for me, so I don't have it yet. But I would get attack rating, put pen on it, and then slot the extra attack rating signet on it. Not going to slot any signets on blue pieces because you don't get those back, and anything worth slotting here is worth too much to lose when you destroy this gear. Finally, we're going to be getting our issue 14 piece, which you get from beating the solo raid at the end of issue 14. We're going to be getting attack, putting piercing on it, and eventually, once you get the signet slot from running the solo raid enough times, I would slot that on there as well. Finally, we have a new auxiliary here if you've got it. This is actually going to be from the missions in New York, and I cannot offhand remember the issue, but you get it from the missions that you get in New York from the mad scientist there. And we're going to put Augur on it, which makes Timber have a 22% chance to deal 45% more damage, which is huge. So that is the skills and the gear, and we're going to run through a quick rotation here. I'm going to be using the help of a neat little mod called Effects UI that you can get from the Cursed client to sort of help visualize what we're doing here. So this is the elemental force counter. It's going to go up to 5, and then it's going to turn yellow and count down for 5 seconds. During the time that it's yellow, we have the extra crit damage buff. So we're going to click on that to make it go back down to 0 and come over here. Oh, and one more thing, sorry. If you have stimulants or if you want to spend the 100,000 packs per to get stimulants, again, you can look at the Secret World database on how to craft these things. But if you get critical rating, and then you get the kickback, which has a trigger. In this case, we're going to critically hit, and every time we critically hit, we get crit power rating. These are two of the kickbacks that I would suggest for quite some time that you'll be using for damage. So we're going to run over here. We're going to start with our buff opener, and then you're going to see that really what we're trying to do is make it so that when that elemental force bar is yellow, we're using our big stuff. So we're going to use lock, stock, and barrel. We're going to use our stims, and then we're going to build up to 3 or 4, then pop our buffs, and then we're going to use all of our, and then we're going to go, build up to the 5th one, which activates elemental force, and we're going to use all our big stuff. So we're going to use out for a kill, then shotgun wedding, then timber, then we're going to use start and finish and out for a kill again, because we'll have a second one thanks to lock, stock, and barrel. All of that will happen underneath these buffs, and then really what we're going to be doing is when elemental force turns yellow, we're going to try to use our big stuff. It's going to look like this. So lock, stock, and barrel, stims, build up to about 4 here, and then we're going to buff, build up to 5, out for a kill, use your elite, use your chainsaw, use your pistol consumer, another out for a kill, then we're building up to 5. Then we're going to be using our consumers again. So notice that they happen underneath the buff from elemental force, and we're going to have timber up. So this time we're starting with timber, and then our other consumers. Now you can see we're going to have lock, stock, and barrel up, so we're going to start that. This time we're actually going to use out for a kill right before elemental force, so that we get shotgun wedding and start and finish underneath it. Finally, we're going to be building up to 5 one more time. See that our timber is ready again, and then we're going to be using our consumers under elemental force. And that's about a 45-second rotation. We did 100,000 damage. If you remember from any of the Nightmare dungeons, if you've seen any of those guides, most bosses only have about 300,000 hit points. So what we did right there is going to get you and the 2 other DPS you have that are doing similar damage to you through the whole fight. As you continue on, just keep trying to get your big stuff underneath elemental force as you go, and remember to use your skills like timber, shotgun wedding, and lock, stock, and barrel off cooldown, and you'll be golden. I would practice this rotation for, give it 10-15 minutes before you run into the dungeons, so that once you get there you have a little bit better idea of what's going on. And I've got a neat little DPS guide here, or DPS tracker here, to show you. Did about 2,384 DPS in about 45 seconds. So this is pretty solid damage for the gear that we are currently running. And you're going to be out DPSing people who have much higher gear than you and aren't buffing with this stuff. It's just going to happen. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll be running this build through a couple of the Nightmare dungeons to show how it works in a more practical setting. I will see you there.